Break it all down for us, Fox News political contributor Tammy Bruce. She is also the Independent Women's Voice president, Rick Unger, the Pod Complex host, and Ned Ryan, former George W. Bush presidential writer. Ned, let me start with you. Here's the thing. There's a lot of folks out there, sadly, in this country rooting, I think, against President Trump and his tariff war. I understand people believe it's misguided and those things, but, businesses, Wall Street, globalists, the Democrats, the media, and yet here we are, the Dow at one point today up 250 points. How do you explain it?
Well, first of all, I would encourage Trump to keep going. I think people realize, I don't think this is going to be long-term, Charles. I really don't. This tariff back and forth is really about Trump saying to them, listen, we want fair trade. We want you to stop stealing. We want you to stop cheating. But more importantly, Charles, this is really about who's going to control the technology of the future. And I think a lot of people that are looking at this closely are realizing there's more to this than just the back and the forth. And so I know that a lot of his supporters are saying, keep going, keep going. And I think China at some point has to realize they can only stimulate their economy so much. They can only devalue their currency so much. I mean, they're $34 trillion in debt, 2.5 times their economy. Charles, they're spending a third of their GDP servicing that debt. At some point, China is actually going to have a conversation about how we get better trade deals and how they stop stealing our technology.
After the close, China reported that the Treasury Department reported that China, for the 3 months out of the last 4, has sold some of their holdings in U.S. Treasuries. But, Rick and Tammy, I don't know that people believe that's necessarily retaliation. But to Ned's point, they're trying to fund a whole lot of things. And ironically, the Chinese market was up big today. Shanghai was up almost 2% to Shenzhen, in part because maybe they're going to start building more ghost cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I have discussed this before, so a little correction. Not all Democrats oppose what the president is doing as it pertains to China. That not only includes me, it includes Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader of the Senate, has been in support of what we're doing with China. Look, here's the relevant question. I happen to agree with this president when he says we should have confronted all of the stealing of intellectual property a long time ago. I think he's right. The issue, though, in terms of how it's impacting on the market, this is a jury that's still out. This is going to hit American consumers. There's virtually no way around it. Now, they may be okay with that, which is why I've been surprised the president hasn't made that speech where he says there may be some sacrifice involved here, but it's a sacrifice we need to make. I would react to that. I think other Americans would, too. He's not doing that.
Yeah.
So we'll see when it hits.
Right now, it amounts, because we talk about these grandiose numbers, $260 billion. It amounts to a $32 billion tax spread across a $20 trillion economy, where it's the largest corporations made $2 trillion in their pocket in the last 3 months. And I think that's another thing sort of bifurcated today in the message, right? There was the China stuff, but there was also the realization that we got an amazing economy, and this thing is not going to slow down.
Yeah, look, and I think a lot of this is already baked in clearly into the stock market, but they've seen the president operate, as you've noted. They know that he, in fact, has people's best interests in mind, that he does 10% and not 20, because it still gives him more negotiation room, doesn't it?
Also, let's be honest, right, it also gets the 10% we get through Christmas.
Right. Right. So look.
That mitigates Rick's concern a little bit.
There's a method, but there's a method to this, and I think the market sees that. They know, and they know with all the decisions before, which everyone, of course, was also clutching their pearls, ended up being fine. And people don't realize, too, when they think of, and the president tweeted a while ago when somebody said, oh, we've got to be, worried about, we need China. And he said, no, you know what, they need us. Right? We're in the better position here.
We're the customer.
And we're seeing this now with that 18% drop at Shanghai, joining Turkey, Argentina, and Venezuela as the 4 worst players in the market. That they're in trouble. Right. And that tells you again that, yes, China maybe doesn't have the luxury to fight back and to punish us. They've got to run this their country, which they've done obviously but not well for quite some time.
It's interesting because Shanghai is down 18% this year, but what people don't realize is that exchange is down 48% in the last 3 years. I think there's already some issues there, and I think the irony of all of this is that this trade wars is revealing, bringing those issues to the surface. That's going to make it much harder, Rick, for China. I know she is president for life. He's the new emperor, but he's got his own issues with capital flight and things like that.
Yeah, don't confuse their politics with their economics, because they may not be the same thing. Look, I think all of us here will probably agree we will probably do better in this trade war that's going to come. I actually think that's the case. My concern remains, and also something we've talked about in the past, you notice the markets react far more poorly when we have this trade war with our allies. The market doesn't like it when we're threatening Europe, when we're threatening Canada, when we're threatening Mexico. I think Tammy's right. It is baked into a certain extent with China. But the other part of it is we are not having an adverse reaction because we basically know this is something we have to do.
Ned, the message of the market today, though, also to me is that a GDP which may have back-to-back 4% growth, back-to-back quarters of 4% growth,
right.
Higher wages, 6.9 million job openings, record corporate profits, people coming back into the labor force. It's an amazing situation, and for now, happening with minimal inflation.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, going back to some of what was addressed earlier, Charles, I think most of the American people, and I agree with Rick, I want Trump to come out and address this and say, as we go down this path, again, I don't think this is going to be long. I literally think China is in a major game of bluff. I think they're waiting through the midterms to see how the midterms actually turn out. And I think we might actually see some serious conversations post-midterms.
Because Trump tweeted out again specifically about China going after those key Midwestern states, aiming at farmers, aiming at ranchers, aiming at some of the heartland industrial areas. So obviously everyone understands what China is trying to do, and they're trying to tip the scales. They're trying to help the Democrats win the midterms. Do you think that'll work?
Well, so let me remind people once again why this all started. We put tariffs on steel and aluminum to protect those industries, which, according to the WTO guidelines, perfectly normal, perfectly legal. China, with its retaliatory tariffs, is targeting red states and really targeting Trump supporters. I think they're doing that, obviously, to intentionally try and influence the elections. And I think they're waiting to see what actually happens post-midterms. And so, but I think I agree with Rick. I want Trump to come out and say, listen, if we get into a more extended trade war, this is about America taking a stand and saying, who do we want to be as a people in the very near future? We have to make those decisions. If we have to pay a little bit extra, Charles, I and others, tens of millions, are willing to do that to make sure that we get this properly reset with China.
Rick? Yeah, as much as I love hearing my friend Ned say the words, I agree with Rick. I mean, that's a wonderful
rare.
thing.
Don't worry, we got it on tape.
It's rare. I have to disagree with him a little bit. There's a distinction that has to be made with respect to what we're doing with China and the steel and aluminum tariffs, which I think we're all going to find is going to cost us way more jobs than it was beneficial.
All right, we'll see. We'll see. Although I do believe it could be a national security issue in the sense that our aluminum production capacity is where we were right after World War II. And I think it's right. We're friends with Canada. If we go to war with China in 10 years, I want to be able to produce our own ships. I want to give Tammy the last word, though, because getting back to this election part of this, I remember throughout the campaign, I tweeted over and over again. I said, if you're a Trump supporter, would you be willing to pay more if we go into a trade fight with China? And all of them told me, yes, yes, yes. I've retweeted it over and over again, and they've said yes. Now, I know there's a big difference saying I'm ready to fight and then going to the store and saying maybe that color flat screen TV is an extra $200.
No, Americans have always come through, whether, ground wars, whether it's D-Day, the nature of knowing, rationing, et cetera. We come forward. We know what it takes. When we elected Donald Trump, we knew what the backlash would be. We knew we were in for a fight. Americans understand this. If there's anyone in the world who's willing to sacrifice, we are the nation that has done it. And we know also we're able to do it, and we want to do it when we've got leadership that understands and is going to come through and win for us.
So the bottom line is that higher flat screen TV is the modern day war bond, folks. All right, coming.